What's up, everybody? Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. I am Peter Ariz alongside D Money, and welcome into our daily show talking transfer portal, recruiting, coaching movement all across the world of college football. We've been doing this now for just over a month now. We appreciate everyone's support early on as we continue to grow this page. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to help us continue to do that. D, portal's coming to a close here pretty much at the end of this week, but there's still a lot of happenings going on and some crazy things we'll get to here in just a moment.
Yeah, like I said, the portal's closed for most teams, but we've already seen players who transferred leave the school they transferred to, so it really doesn't stop. We thought maybe we start transitioning more and more into recruiting, which we will be covering in depth every single day here on out, but portal's still going. A lot of big commitments, a lot of names that are familiar. Some of them have transferred multiple times in the headlines, so excited to dive into it.
Yeah, and we'll start with what I just referenced being a really crazy story and someone who has already transferred once and looks like he's going to be headed elsewhere already in a short span of time here. As Jontay Cook, wide receiver, former blue chip recruit in the 2023 recruiting class, was a 5-star, went to Texas, left Texas in the middle of the season in November, wasn't happy with his playing time, and was a big name on the market for pretty much a couple months since he entered the portal then. And Florida was in the mix. I know Gator fans were pretty upset when he didn't end up going there. It looks like they could have dodged a bullet here, as there's rumors he was getting into fights, missing workouts, late to workouts. With these rumors, you never know, but that's the early kind of word. And if you're Washington, good for you for cutting ties and making sure you don't let that infiltrate your locker room. If you're Jontay Cook, horrible sign here early on at Washington. And it's going to be interesting to see who takes a chance on him here.
Yeah, really unfortunate. This is a guy where you're watching the UTSA game this year, Texas played. He was shot out of a cannon. You could know nothing about the player and watch just how explosive he was and say, this is going to be a big-time guy with Coach Sark. Obviously, that doesn't work out. Other receivers shine. He does not. He goes on to Washington, expected to be a major piece in that puzzle for Washington. A lot of people thought he was going to Florida. Then he goes to Washington. And, again, like you said, very good for Washington for acting fast and not letting it become a bigger problem. But the problem is for them, this was their guy in the spring portal window, in the winter portal window. So now you have to go back to the spring portal window, add a receiver that hopefully is of equal talent or ability to Jontay Cook. Somebody's going to help your young quarterback as he continues to develop. Really like the signs you've seen from him, but he needs playmakers. This was going to be a big one, a very explosive one. So, yes, you did the right thing to move on, but Washington, I expect them to be one of the most active teams in that spring portal window for wide receivers, because you absolutely have to help your young quarterback. The whole program is built around him. So let's see what happens here with Washington. And then as far as the Jontay Cook side, I think junior college, especially if junior college doesn't count against your eligibility, which might be where this is trending with the Diego Pavia injunction, I think is a no-brainer for him. Go down there, get everything in order, and then try your hand at another school, behave. He's got a lot of football ahead of him. If he turns it around now, with a guy with his speed and ability, teams will be forgiving. But this year is going to have to be basically a rehab year where he's playing, staying out of trouble, doing the right things, and being featured. You also don't want to be just sitting on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is you look at the situation when he left Texas, and there was a report that Ewers had a $6 million offer on the table. Jontay Cook tweeting back, wasting y'all money for real. So again, the signs aren't great in terms of what he would bring to your locker room. But again, like you mentioned, this was a guy who, after Tacario Davis at the cornerback spot for Washington, coming over from Arizona, was their most high-profile transfer in that offensive, and especially on that offensive side of the ball. So it had to have been pretty bad for them to move on.
Yeah, and again, like I mentioned earlier, Damon Williams is your future, your freshman quarterback. That bowl game against Louisville, where they just came up just short. He was dealing all the way up until the last throw. he's somebody that needs playmakers. You look at when Washington has had major success recently with Michael Penix. You had 3 NFL receivers around that quarterback. So that's the model here in Washington. So you got to continue to build up your playmakers in terms of, the wide receivers. There's not anybody that jumps out, aside from, of course, Denzel Boston, who is going to be one of the top receivers in the country next year. You don't see too much to build around with a Damon Williams. You need to add more.
Michael Suero, man, appreciate your support. Coconut Grove Kane, thank you, man. I saw you on the Prince Strawn video, man, commenting. We had to show some Bahamian love there for you, man. So as we keep this thing moving, this was a transfer that when it was announced he was entering the portal, I think you and I were both pretty surprised. And that's Damon Wilson from Georgia, former 5-star recruit. And he lands now at Missouri. He was the number 5 rated player in the portal. And it was kind of a head scratcher because he was already contributing at Georgia. 3 sacks this season, 22 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, forced and recovered 2 fumbles. And he was probably going to be a starter for them this year, a program that perennially produces first-round picks at that position. And again, has nothing to do with Missouri here, right? I think it's a good landing spot for him. We have a lot of respect for that program and what Coach Drinkwitz is building. But it just didn't make a whole lot of sense when he entered the portal in general. But Missouri is getting a flat-out stud here.
Yeah, look, Missouri, maybe not with Coach Drinkwitz as much, although he did have some production this year, but just in terms of historically has produced some big-time defensive linemen, right? I mean, you just go down the line all the way back to Alden Smith. The Smiths, they've had a lot of really good pass rushers. Shane Ray. Michael Sam. So they've had guys, Charles Harris. They've had guys at this position. So it's not like he's going to Siberia, right? Even though, of course, leaving Georgia was a bit of a head scratcher, given that he was in line to play such a big role. But give it up for Coach Drinkwitz, man. This is a major, major addition. You lose Williams and Nwaneri, going to Nebraska, more of a potential guy. Damon Wilson in a similar boat as far as there's more there, but he's been productive to this point. You've seen him in SEC games make plays. He's a little older. So I think if that's the trade, you're coming up way ahead because you still have a lot of upside with Wilson, but he's played in the SEC. He's made plays in big games as recently as this year, as recently as a couple of weeks ago. So he's been playing big-time football and is still ready for that major jump. We thought it was going to happen wearing that Georgia Bulldogs uniform like so many other first-round edge rushers of the past few years. It is instead going to be with Missouri, and I think it's a phenomenal move for them. Ohio State looked like the favorite for a while. They fell off when Missouri made a strong push. You had Miami kind of creeping around off the edges there. I heard Texas was also involved here, but Missouri gets the big win, and it's a team that's replacing a lot, right? Look offensively. You are losing a ton, but man, I'm getting a little bit excited about what Missouri's got cooking because their quarterback situation, to me, even though it's in terms of positions that aren't settled, meaning like, you look at some teams that have returning starters like a Nussmeier, right? Guys like that, Drew Aller. Aside from the position groups that you're set with your starter, a Cade Klubnik, this to me is one of the most exciting rooms in the country with Bo from Penn State. A guy I think he's got a lot to show. I think, he would have been very successful at Penn State if he stayed. Of course, Drew Aller staying pushed him to Missouri. We did a whole video on what he can bring. I really love what he brings athletically. He can throw a lot more than he's thrown at Penn State. And then you got Zollers in the mix, who to me is one of the most exciting young players in the country. I really, really love what he showed in high school. He got injured as a senior. He should be fine, but basketball player, really explosive and athletic kind of guy, has a big arm. You got other talented guys in that room as well. So the quarterback situation is going to be a quarterback battle that we think is going to be the most exciting of spring potentially. And now defensively starting to add some premier talent. Also, you added Jalen Catalon, right, the safety. So you get some veteran experience there in the secondary. And now you have a pass rusher who can really do some damage.
Yeah, and just lastly here on Wilson, this is a guy he's not a a pass rusher where you say, well, we got to put the weight on him, we got to get him stronger. He's there physically. You see the length here in this graphic, when he's got his arms out wide like that. So this is a future NFL top pick to me, a very high NFL draft pick, as long as he continues to develop. And I have no reason to think it won't happen there in Missouri.
And by the way, I should mention Sam Horn in the quarterback battle also when I went through the quarterback battle in a prior video. Again, I'm a huge Zollers fan, love what Bo can bring, but Sam Horn, a lot of Tigers fans were in the comments saying, keep an eye on this guy. So that to me, and we did a whole video on it. We're going to revisit it as spring practice comes through. We'll be providing updates from spring practice. So like and subscribe if you're a Tigers fan and want to keep up with the latest from spring practice. I am extremely excited to see that quarterback battle unfold. And look, in practice, they're going to be going against Catalan in the secondary and against Wilson here off the edge. Should be exciting matchups there in practice.
So NC State fans may want to kind of cover their ears up for these next few topics here, because a lot of defensive backs who were very good players there left that program, and one of them landing at USC. Another school that they've lost a lot, but slowly but surely here they've added some really, really solid pieces to that roster. He's the 12th pickup for USC this portal. And Bishop Fitzgerald is a guy who's came from the JUCO level. It's funny, D, we mentioned this the other day, but I feel like there's a resurgence of JUCOs here the last year plus, especially now with the Diego Pavia ruling. It becomes a very attractive option. A lot of these guys we're talking about, Wayman Jordan, another guy who ended up here at USC as the number 1 running back out of the JUCO level. Why not? So here's a guy in Fitzgerald who was at JUCO before NC State, played a lot at NC State last year, 718 snaps, 55 tackles, 3 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, a forced fumble. So someone who played a lot of football in the ACC last year, started 16 games over the past 2 seasons for NC State. And if you're USC, defensively, we understand they've continued to take steps there with Lincoln Riley. And this is someone who you'd say is a pretty ready-made piece coming in.
Yeah, look, we've seen a ton in the ACC. Originally from Woodbridge, Virginia, goes to Coffeyville Junior College in Kansas, a very successful, historic junior college there. 6 foot, 195, ball hawk. You've seen him deflect balls to his teammates. You've seen him pick it off. He's someone who has made plays, was the number 1 junior college safety, but he's made plays at the ACC level. You look at the takeaways for USC, 62nd in the country last year. So they want to get that number up. They need to take the ball away to win some of these tight Big Ten games. That's something that Bishop Fitzgerald could do. Pro Football Focus grades him out well as a run defender, 78 run defense grade, 77.6 tackling grade. You mentioned all ACC honorable mention. You lose Akili Arnold, so there's a clear need at safety. You got Christian Pierce in the mix, Kamari Ramsey. But I think this is somebody who, given his production, coming from a defense that's had success, not so much this year, but over the years with Dade Doran. I think this is a good pickup. And you look at the names, man, USC has really added a lot of volume in the portal, lost a lot in the portal as well. Really offensively, there's been a lot of turnover in both directions. But this is the 12th pickup. On the defensive side, if we're focusing there, we've done a lot of videos on the offense. You mentioned Wayman, you mentioned Eli Sanders, right? We did a video yesterday on Prince Strachan. So we've been focusing on USC's offensive transfer portal action coming and going, but defensively, Keyshawn Silver and Jamal Jarrett, 2 big SEC defensive tackles in the middle to make up for the loss of Bear Alexander. And now you add a guy like Fitzgerald. I think it's a good pickup and somebody who fills an obvious need, has some experience, has some age to him. And we'll see what the eligibility looks like with Diego Pavia's ruling. This could be a multi-year guy.
Side note here, D, I gotta say, I've been very impressed with with USC's media team. Like the pictures they take on these visits are pretty cool. I noticed it with the Wayman Jordan stuff, with the old school, USC Letterman and the aesthetics there in the locker room. I think it's a pretty good look, man. So shout out to their media team at USC.
I mean, it's Hollywood, man. What do you expect? We got a comment here from Kane's Cat Heat 305. USC just means they can't evaluate talent in high school, or they're whiffing really hard as far as the portal action. Look, they didn't meet expectations last year, so there's a lot that they're trying to get done. Now, we'll say, if you look at their recruiting class this year, one of the best recruiting classes that they've had under Lincoln Riley. Houston Longstreet, really, really impressive quarterback, huge arm. I love this quarterback class in general. I think it's the best quarterback class. I'm talking about the 2025 quarterback class. I think it's probably the most impressive quarterback class that I've seen since I've been following recruiting. Longstreet, probably the most arm talent of anyone in that class. He's certainly in the conversation, just a whip for a right arm. Really excited about what he brings to the table. Jakeem Stewart, Thanos, who's been a household name since he was a freshman in high school. He's somebody who's going to bring some athleticism to that defensive tackle room. We already mentioned the 2 transfers they got there. So, again, looking at the rankings, number 16 overall, number 13 on the composite. They've done better there than they've done historically, and they got some good talent.
So this is a very, very interesting one here, this next topic, because it may kind of fly under the radar to some, but to me is the most intriguing thing that we're going to talk about today from both sides. And that is Matthew Sluka, former UNLV and Holy Cross quarterback, is going to be headed to James Madison. And of course, this was one of the biggest NIL related stories of the season, opt-out related stories of the season, when UNLV had the hot start to the season. After their 3-0 start, he opted out due to what he said were NIL promises that were made and not kept. Now, it's been a bit of a he said, she said situation. There was nothing, unfortunately, for him signed there, which to me, as someone who's been in the space as an agent, that's something that should really go more on his representation than the kid himself. And I know he took a lot of heat when he opted out, but at the same time still needed to do that to preserve the year of eligibility if that's what he wanted to do, and obviously try to get his money that he felt he was promised. Now, this thing unfolded here. He had more time than anyone really to find a landing spot as a quarterback. Had a really successful career at Holy Cross before the move to UNLV, and now finds himself almost later than any of the quarterbacks in the transfer portal cycle, finding his home right before the deadline here. And on the other side of it, JMU didn't have too bad of a season here last year, 9-4, but they had a really, really solid quarterback in Alonzo Barnett, who threw for 26 touchdowns and 4 interceptions this year. So let's try to make sense of this entire situation.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out too, because like you said, you have a quarterback that a lot of people like in the room. A lot of people were kind of circling him potentially as a portal guy, right? So you not only add Sluka, you add Camden Coleman from Richmond, one of the better young quarterbacks in the FCS level in the CAA. Led his team to a 10-3 record at that level. So there's a lot of guys here that are going to want to play. I wonder how this is going to shake out in spring. Is some of these guys going to shake free as possibly a post-spring quarterback for a team that gets an injury or has a need? So that's something to watch. Coleman, a guy with great size, as does Sluka. Now, Sluka, the issue with him is just passing the ball. 43% of his passes with UNLV, but he ran the ball well, protected the ball. And the key to this pickup, I think, in terms of the Sluka side of it, is the relationship with the head coach, Bobby Chesney. So look at the quote. This is from Chesney when Sluka had the whole controversy with UNLV. He had a very long quote, Pete. I put the tweet there in the rundown. Pull it up. But he basically defended him very strong. He said, look, he had a lot of offers for hundreds of thousands of dollars to leave Holy Cross. Only did so when it was a situation that he believed in football-wise. Chesney said, I don't think this is about the money or dollars and cents. That's not what Sluka is. He is definitely about trying to find the best situation possible. He wants to play football as hard as he possibly can, and money never had anything to do with it. So I imagine in this situation, money had nothing to do with that either. So, pretty strong support from the head coach there. We'll see if there's a preference, right, for Sluka once this battle starts. Someone he knows and believes in. But of course, the offense, being more of a passing offense with Barrow, is very successful. So
it does make you wonder here, as we have this comment here from Canes Cats Heat 305. He says a weird take, meaning from James Madison's point of view. He says bad locker room guy right there. The coaches blackballed him, which is good. So it's his opinion that it was good they blackballed him. But the point is, it does kind of add up in a sense that it took this long for him to find a landing spot. And the only do you think that was the case, that maybe the only place that was willing to take him was his coach that he had previous knowledge with, previous relationship with, and the coach had knowledge of him as a person and a character wise, as we saw there. And this was where he had to land. That's just from the outside looking in, it kind of seems that way.
Yeah. But look, this is a guy who knows him, right? So if he was really that bad in the locker room, no one would know more than Bob Chesney. So this is someone he knows, someone that he trusts, and is obviously putting his faith in. The combination of that with the Richmond QB Coleman, that's what surprises me, because you have a good starter, right? So is Sluka going to be just sort of your Tim Tebow in 2006, running in there short yardage, and then Barrett's going to run the whole show? Are you worried about losing someone to the portal, with teams circling? Who knows how it's going to be? But this is a situation to monitor. I wouldn't be surprised if someone shakes loose here in the spring.
So talking about James Madison, to the program that their former head coach is at, and that is Indiana. We referenced earlier that there would be some former NC State defensive back talk on the show. And Devan Boykin is headed to play for the Hoosiers. This is a guy who actually missed all of last season with an ACL injury that he tore it in prep for the Pop-Tarts Bowl last season. So Indiana losing a lot in the secondary, a lot of experience. And we've said this before with Indiana. We talked about the tight end they picked up the other day, Holden Stays from Tennessee, that early on in Curt Cignetti's tenure, they've done a very, very good job of evaluating portal talent. Obviously, it was a lot of guys they brought with them from James Madison, but it still is a skill to be able to say, look, this guy can play at this school, at this level in our conference. And this is someone in Devan Boykin who, again, missed all of last season. So you don't have that film from last year. But from the season before that, was one of the highest rated players in the country against the run as a safety, according to PFF. So you're kind of betting on him getting back to that level.
Yeah, I think that's what stands out. Having watched this guy in the ACC is the tackling ability. He comes out, he comes up hard. He's very consistent. He's not like someone who's just going for the big hit. He's a form tackler, but he is physical. Also can't pick the ball off. When he was here, he picking off Drake May. Now with the New England Patriots, picking off Clay Klubnik, probably the best quarterback returning in the ACC. So this is a guy who can make plays on the ball, but I do think in the box is going to be where he really thrives. But look at where he's lined up. This is 2023 numbers: 266 snaps at free safety, 123 snaps at slot corner, and 111 snaps in the box. So he was a Swiss Army knife. He was all over the defense. Indiana stepping up in competition now. The schedule is getting tougher. Obviously they performed admirably last year, but you need to keep growing and developing. Adding a guy like this to fortify your run defense. You lose Sanguinetti, Terry Jones, Sean Asbury. So you need more safety help. There's a proven player, a veteran player who can really help out in multiple spots in your secondary, like the pickup. And again, I think the trademark you will see from this guy is form, tackling, and consistency.
NC State, man, they've lost a lot this offseason, including their defensive coordinator to Marshall.
Yeah, it's strange because it's a program that's been so much about consistency, but having a tough year last year, sort of a disappointing year when you look at the expectations going in, you lose so much. Now it's a program that's really being built around the young quarterback, CJ Bailey. He had interest. People were trying to pull him out of the portal, and he was pretty clear saying, I'm staying here. I'm resigning, build around me. And he's shown a lot of poise, probably more running ability than we expected coming out of high school. He's got great size. The throwing, the motion's ugly, but it gets there. He was pretty effective passing the ball this year, had some big games. So NC State's only going to go as far as CJ Bailey takes him, but you never like to lose veteran talent in the secondary, with Fitzgerald moving on to USC and now losing Boykin to Indiana.
Well, we really love a couple things here on Group Chat Football Live, and those would be former 5-stars and UNLV football. We've got both of them here with this next one, and that's Denver Harris, who was, like I just said, a 5-star recruit. He's one of these poster childs for the transfer portal era, kind of in a, not in the most positive way to this point. Right now that this is going to be school number 4 for him, starting his career at Texas A&M, then went to LSU, was at UTSA last year, and then UNLV now going to be his next stop. And look, I say it hasn't been the most positive thing when it comes to the transfers up to this point, but an opportunity here, really a final opportunity at UNLV, as we've talked about pretty much every day here, with Dan Mullen trying to bring in as much pure talent as possible and then trying to see what he can get out of it. This is not the first high-profile transfer in terms of corner for UNLV, as last week they picked up LaTerrence Welch from Arizona State, who was their number 3 corner this year before getting kicked off the team for an issue with the teammates stole his watch. So that was not a great situation. But again, Denver Harris, you're betting on the upside here, or what's left of it, in terms of a guy who plays a premium position of cornerback.
Yeah, and you'd lose some guys to the power 4 level if you're UNLV in the secondary. We talked about Jalen Catalon going to Missouri, one of the big pickups of the offseason in terms of the secondary. Tony Grimes, another well-traveled player, goes to Purdue. Jet Elad going to Rutgers. So you lose guys to the power 4, and you bring in these former power 4 players. And we talked about it. Dan Mullen loves the SEC. He loves the Southeast. He loves to get these kind of guys. Welch, again, former LSU. Denver Harris, former Texas A&M. This is a guy who, look, at the cornerback position is very much about traits. There's not that many guys that have the size and athleticism of Denver Harris, and guys with those traits are going to keep getting opportunities. The same thing at defensive line. So could it work out? Could it not work out? There's a variance there. But if you bring in enough of these guys with the ability, you're hoping to find at least a few that stick around, that do the right thing, and give you high-level coverage ability in your conference. Top 50 player from Houston, Texas, came from a great program in North Shore and had some production last year for UTSA. It seemed like he was playing better and the light was coming on. Obviously wanted to change the scenery. UNLV, to me, is the favorite in terms of getting to the championship last year, now having a chance to get back and win it with Dan Mullen, the best play caller in the conference. Got Calandria, a quarterback who can make plays. Talked about Alex Orji, sort of that gimmicky, maybe Tim Tebow 06 weapon for Dan Mullen. Jalen Glover in the backfield, somebody who Dan Mullen's familiar with in the state of Florida, originally from Lakeland area. So pieces on offense are there. Defensively, when you lose all those guys to the power 4, you need power 4 body types to replace them. I think that's what you're seeing with Denver Harris. Boomer bust type pickup for UNLV. And look, if you're in Las Vegas, you got to go boomer bust, right? That's the nature of the town, and that's the nature of the program right now. Some of these aren't going to hit. Some of these guys that have bounced around so many programs, bounced around for a reason. But if you hit, you're going to hit big.
Well, and there's something to be said for, and the hit rate on this may not be very good in terms of percentage, but there is something to be said for a guy like Harris who understands, or should understand, this is his last chance to show what he's got for the NFL scouts. If you're a former 5-star recruit, you carry that with you to the NFL, believe it or not. There's always, the scouts are going to have that checked. It doesn't mean they're going to draft you any higher because of it, but it does make them kind of look at you when they go into those schools and with an extra, all right, well, this guy was a 5-star for a reason, had to have been from a physical standpoint back in the day, because we understand the 5-stars all stand out from a physical talent perspective, right? But there's more to it. So if he can understand that, and not just him, but some of these other guys that they've brought in here, and say, look, this is my last chance to really show it for the NFL, I think that can help that light go off for some of these guys. And hopefully for Dan Mullen and staff, that is the case here with Denver Harris.
Yeah, it's they're going for it, man. I don't think Mullen's out there to build slow, right? He wants to make a big splash year one. Harris is a guy, like you mentioned, hungry to potentially make the pros. And by the way, look at that Texas A&M class, man. That was touted as the best recruiting class of all time. Aside from a guy like Shamar Stewart, who will probably be a first-round pick here in the NFL draft coming up, a lot of turnover. A lot of these names are spread all across the country, not at College Station. They're doing fine. They have a really nice recruiting class coming in, had a solid season with Coach Elko their first year. But, man, that best class of all time, maybe when you add all these pieces up, it ends up being close to the best class of all time, but certainly was not that for Texas A&M.
Well, we appreciate everyone who's been on with us today. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel here, Group Chat Football Live, as we go every day talking transfers, as you've seen here. Sadly, that's going to be coming to an end here soon. I say sadly, but man, it's been a whirlwind to keep up with, man. So we'll be done with that for a little bit, and then of course recruiting will pick up now. A lot of offers go out in the spring, and the coaching movement, it looks like slowed down a little bit, but there's still some stuff here and there. We saw the Tom Allen move earlier this week. We saw Miami hired Corey Heatherman over the weekend. So still a few things to kind of button up here along the way. But we will see you guys tomorrow. Appreciate everyone who was on with us here. And for the Canes fans here, we'll be going live on Canes Insight in just a bit with Mike Ryan. So stay tuned for that.
See you tomorrow.